Natalia, there have been a lot of developments in Russia and Ukraine in the last few days. The mobilization, threats of nuclear attack. There have been lots of people that have left Russia and moved to neighboring countries. But one thing that we haven't forgotten about is the people that are in prison, people that have been jailed, including Vladimir Putin and Alexei Navalny and so many other people. There's nobody better, I don't think, to keep us up to date on what's going on with that than you. So today, would you just give us your understanding first of what's going on with your friends and your colleagues in terms of their jailing and imprisonment?
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, there is so much going on, and probably the most terrible scenario is developing, and the most horrible nightmare that we are seeing with the invasion of Ukraine. You're absolutely right. It's important to know and to remember about those people who were always on the side of the good, those who were always warning the world, the democratic world, the world in general, about the true criminal and corrupt nature of Putin's regime. Those who are detained now by this regime, like Alexei Navalny, like our former colleague Vladimir Putin, like Ilya Yashin, many other people who are in jail, and the number of political prisoners is growing in number every day. People are protesting against this war every day. There was only one day since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. I believe it was on June 13th, when nobody in Russia was detained for anti-war protest. All other days, all this time, people are being detained for their active anti-war position. And with those who are already detained, today we received the news about Vladimir that he received a new charge. This time, state treason. It's a very serious charge. It's actually the article that I was threatened with, and the reason why I had to flee from my own country in December of 2012. The sentence for this can be up to 20 years, and he has already two charges against him prior to that for so-called brand new article for the fakes about the Russian army, but in fact telling the truth that the Russian army is killing Ukrainian, not only armed forces, but civilians and children and so on. And the second charge was for his connection to an undesirable organization, and now it's even a stronger charge on state treason. So we are, of course, very concerned about his safety. And basically, he's in jail by those people who were trying to kill him twice, with Novichok in 2015 and 2017, and the same people are keeping him now in jail. So, of course, the situation is very concerning. So thank you for remembering about him and many others.
Natalia, this situation involving Mr. Kara-Murza is, as you say, very serious, and indeed they have tried to kill him twice. And the people that have him imprisoned and they're certainly in charge of his detention are connected very closely to the leadership at the Kremlin. And the Kremlin has been under a lot of pressure in the last, well, since this war began, because the war has failed, and certainly within the last few weeks, the Ukrainian military has taken territory back. The West has been helping Ukraine. And then there have been these threats about nuclear weapons, the annexation, the mobilization, which is not going well, as I mentioned before. Do you get the sense that this decision to charge Mr. Kara-Murza with state treason is another one of those elements where they're trying to use people as weapons, put this threat out there to try to push back against those that are trying to help Russians and help Russia? Do you get the sense that he's being used in that way?
Yes, definitely. Political prisoners were always a tool for the Kremlin to blackmail, and so yes, they use them as the negotiation point with different countries, and of course Vladimir Putin being known everywhere in the world, being respected everywhere in the world, they understand that he's one of those coins that they can add to this negotiation process. And what we see, judging by the actions of the Kremlin, that this escalation of the nuclear threats recently, and this is what they're trying to do, is to force the West and Ukraine for negotiations for the so-called peace, as they call it. Maybe that's why they needed to annex 4 more territories of Ukraine, again, just to raise their stakes. Though, as you rightfully mentioned, the Kremlin has many problems, because even if this Crimea as a territory was at least understandable where the borders are and all this, here, like, of course, the Ukrainian army is offending and is gaining more and more territories as we speak, and I'm sure they will never stop. And actually, it will be very, very difficult for the Kremlin to keep these territories. We see that the Russian army is not ready, like, to grab more territories or even to keep those territories that are already under, like, Russian control by now. But the morale of the Russian troops, the many problems with mobilization, with supplies, with logistics, everything else is, like, very, very low and very poor. And we see, like, if prior to the full-scale invasion, we thinking about Crimea, that it will take time, it will take years with all these negotiations, international procedures and things like that. Now Ukraine has a very good historic chance to get back all the territories, not even speaking about this newly annexed 4 territories, but Crimea back. And it's also a historic opportunity for Russia to have this regime change, because what they did with the invasion, it was suicidal for the regime.
Yeah. So speaking of which, what is it that the Free Russia Foundation needs the world to know and to do to help with this situation, not just for Mr. Kara-Murza and Mr. Navalny and all of the other people and the families that are in this serious situation? What is it that your organization needs the rest of the world to know and to do?
Well, the most important thing for us is that the world, the US, for example, understands that it's not just the war between like Russia, Putin's Russia and Ukraine. This is the war between the dictatorship and the democratic world. And the Kremlin is fighting with the West, within the entire world. So it's happening on the Ukrainian territory, and the Ukrainians are on the front lines of this fight between the good and the evil. So it's important for everybody to understand that it's not just some regional war, some place, but it impacts everybody, and this is about our future, about our common security and global peace. And also another thing that is very important for us is that like there is no push for like temporary truce or some peace talks or things like that. For us, victory here will be the complete and absolute victory of Ukraine, and complete and total defeat of the Putin's regime. And then the regime change would be possible in Russia, because as long as Putin or whoever else, his successor, or the same, like, military junta is in power in Russia, the world will never be safe. Ukraine will never be safe. It's always will be a huge threat from the east, and we don't want it to happen. We want Russia to become free. We want actually Russia to become a very boring country, so that the biggest scandal would be, I don't know, something like a doping scandal, but not like attacking neighbors and killing people and things what's happening now.
It looks like it would be a very long time before Russia has that kind of problem. Again, a minor problem, considering what's taken place and the situation that the Putin regime has gotten itself and the country in.
So I don't think that the elites are happy with everything. I know that, and the effect of sanctions is getting more and more snowballing. So I think they are the ones also who are pushing Putin for some kind of negotiations with the West and with Ukraine.
Okay, so, if this regime begins to crumble, or if it is crumbling, how would we in the West, how could we know? What are the signs that it's crumbling? What are the signs of trouble that we would see?
We'll see definitely a split of elites. We'll see them attacking each other more. We'll see a lot of defectors, a lot of those who will be like also among those who will be fleeing Russia, would be offering the money, trying to launder their reputation. We will see a lot of protests inside Russia. We will see withdrawal of troops and things like that, because again, nobody will be able to control this, and more regional leaders would be speaking about the independence of the regions, if not separation from Russia, but at least for more rights, for more being like again partners with making Russia, like the Russian Federation is such a Potemkin village. It's because it's quite a unitary state. Federation is a fake thing. There is no federation. There is, even in this newest Russian constitution, there is now a state forming nation, Russians, though Russia is not only an 11 time zone country, it's or 85 or whatever now number of regions with all these occupied territories. It's also a country with over 190 ethnic minorities. And of course, many of them will be demanding more autonomous, at least autonomous status, or even won't see their future with Russia any longer. It's very possible that Russia won't survive its current borders in future. So there will be a lot of things, but it's important for the Western communities to understand those processes, to see Russia and analyze Russia not only from the point of view of Moscow, but understand that it's a very big country with all these peculiarities. Then to be ready strategically, to be ready with scenarios, to be ready with policies. Again, it's very, very important to be prepared right now, not just to answer in a very sporadic way, in a very just be like do everything like after it's happened, but to be like to do a lot of preemptive measures as well.
Yeah, that was my next question, Natalia. You know, if and when this regime crumbling or whatever takes place happens, is there a system? Are there people that are ready to step in to engage in a democratic way to lead that country? So that's the question. If this happens, what's the plan?
Yes, of course, there are a lot of people. Russia, like the real treasure of Russia is this smart and pro-democracy thinking people. Those who want Russian people to live better, and those who want Russia to become a civilized actor on this international arena. Not natural resources, not oil and gas. The people are really the real treasure, and we have a lot of them. Unfortunately, many of them have to be in exile now, but we definitely have a lot of very respected, very experienced and forward-thinking Russians who can be like we discussed today. Vladimir Putin, I don't know anybody who could be a better foreign minister, for example. Or we have recently announced Vladimir Milov, a close colleague of Alexei Navalny and former Russian deputy minister of energy, as our vice president. Again, he can be minister of energy or economics or even prime minister, and many like Sergei Guriev or Sergei Alexashenko and Romanova and Glenn Lukyan, so many people who can be, again, have positions in this new Russia, a free and democratic Russia. And it's a good question. And a lot of groups, including us, Free Russia Foundation, we are thinking about that. We are thinking that it's, again, our goal, not just regime change, but our main goal is to so that Russia is sustainably free and democratic, and so that we have all these democratic institutions and all these reforms are being conducted. And so we are thinking about that. We have the project which is called Reform, and we have policy papers, and not only on previously the only areas that were discussed by Russians were mostly constitutional reform, economic reform. So we decided that no, we need to be ready for reforms in any sphere, in army and education and judiciary and environment, absolutely anywhere. So we have a very fundamental roadmap for reforms, and now we're thinking about with many other groups how we can be very, very specifically ready for such kind of changes, and that we know what to do on day 1, on day 2, and everything else, and what laws should be changed, how they should be changed, when, and everything should be very well thought of. We cannot afford any longer to lose Russia again if we would have this historic chance to change it for the better.
Natalia, thank you so much.
Sure.
There's just one other question I'd like to ask you before we go, and that is about the nuclear weapons that Vladimir Putin has threatened to use. Do you get the sense that they are serious about that? Because Dmitry Medvedev has mentioned this, and there are questions as well about stability when it comes to him and the things he said. There are others who talked about this, I think Kadyrov and others. Do you get the sense that they are serious about using tactical nuclear weapons or any nuclear weapons?
Of course, after this full-scale invasion, we cannot be not serious, not to consider all possible ways and how all possible behavior patterns of the Kremlin. Because also many of us didn't believe that this invasion could happen. As I said, it was suicidal for the regime. It only expedited the expiration date. And we should be very, very serious about nuclear threats as well. But again, this is the level of suicidalness even more than in full-scale invasion of Ukraine with that. If it's tactic nuclear weapons, it doesn't change the war actions, doesn't change anything, any dynamics on the battlefield for Russia. It only increases the problems. Are they ready for that? Probably yes. As for strategic, it's very, very unlikely. I think while being suicidal about themselves, they're not that suicidal. Because they were getting all this money, funneling all this money, not just to blow them up. They were funneling all this billions and billions, trillions of dollars, and building the yards and buying yards, building palaces, not to use them, right? Yeah. And even Dmitry Rogozin was saying about 9 years ago, when they were calculating the use of strategic nuclear weapons, he was saying that Russia will survive for 6 hours. And they know that it's just a few hours that they will have if they use this last resort, right? So everywhere in the Russian elite, in the Russian government, they understand that those whose voices we hear the loudest, you mentioned Medvedev and Kadyrov, usually they are the ones who are trying to get attention to themselves. Kadyrov was very much needed before mobilization because he was giving people to this war like a cannon fodder, providing cannon fodder for this war. And his TikTok army was very important in this regard. When the Kremlin tried to postpone mobilization as long as they could, understanding that it's very, very bad for their image and for public opinion, and they tried commercial mobilization first, and Kadyrov was very much important in this regard. And Medvedev as well, he's not he's losing a lot of positions. He needs to be noticeable, and so again, it's even if it's some the nuclear weapons applied only on the territory of Ukraine, for example, a lot of Russian land will be contaminated immediately. It will be much bigger problems than Chernobyl, all these areas, and especially those lands where the biggest agricultural agriculture is happening. So these regions very close to Ukraine, they are the most agriculturally good for Russia. And again, it will be not even shooting in your leg, it will be shooting in your head, basically.
Yes, very good point. That's a very interesting analogy. Natalia Arno, thank you again so much for the insight that you give us, and you always are very good about that, and we thank you for taking time to talk to us. Good luck with this. We will continue to follow and let us know how we can be of assistance with your messaging.
Thank you so much. Glory to Ukraine and freedom to Russia. Thank you.